Welcome to Manhwa Nirvana. This video is the continuation of our previous one. If you haven't watched it yet, you can click the link above to catch up. Now, let's dive right in. The story starts at Jeongal Guild headquarters, where the deputy guildmaster can be seen reading some report. Calling Kang Hoang, he waits for Kang's response. As Kang replies, the deputy master angrily clenches his fist with the paper and says, "Does this make any sense to you?" His eyes glow with anger as he further asks, "You weren't up against a hyena, nor did you run into another teamer, and yet, how did you lose a head-on battle to some guy who didn't even have any equipment?" Kang says, "I have no excuse, sir." The deputy guildmaster turns around, his veins popping out in anger. He says, "You know that I don't criticize for losing due to lack of skill." He moves toward Kang and delivers a slap straight to his face, saying, "But losing after teaming up, that's something I can't let slide." He continues with an angry look. "Teaming is essentially an act that throws away your reputation. Do you understand what this means?" Kang, with his head down, says, "I am sorry, sir." The deputy guildmaster throws some papers onto the table. Kang, seeing these papers, asks, "What are these?" He replies, "It's an invoice. It's something we prepared for players like you who, despite the guild's full support, not only failed to pass the tutorial but also managed to tarnish our name." He continues, as his eyes glow, "For the next 10 years, all rewards you earn will be transferred to the Jeongal Guild. Read it carefully and sign." One of the players from the team raises his hand and says, "This contract seems a bit harsh." He is suddenly grabbed by the deputy guildmaster by the neck as he gasps for air. The master says, "Foolishness always invites suffering," and asks, "Do you have a death wish?" The player apologizes while the other team members, seeing this, are in shock and decide to sign it quickly. The scene then shifts to the Sungsum Guild, more like Samsung, where we see manager Park Mincheal sitting in his office, reviewing a report. He exclaims in disbelief as 3 players stand before him. "I don't blame you, but it's hard to wrap my head around this." One of the players, a man with brown hair, adds, "Same here. The idea that someone unleashed magic without casting is shocking enough, but the fact that they racked up 15 kills, that's insane." Another player with blonde hair jumps in, and they did it alone. They completely wiped out 4 top-ranked teamers. The third player, with black hair, nods and says, "That's right, I had the arena board open and saw it happen in real time. That's just weak talk." He then adjusts his glasses and nods. "Understood. I'll handle the details through the report. For now, you're dismissed." The players seem momentarily stunned by his calm response. He reassures them, Sunum Guild doesn't penalize players for failing the tutorial. Relieved, the players smile. When Park encourages them to do better next time, they bow respectfully, promising to improve before leaving, laughing as they go. Once they leave, Park looks back at the report. One person managed to take down an entire team of 4, he thinks to himself. Turning to his assistant Yunhee, he asks, "Did you find anything yet?" Yunhee replies, "We're still working on it." Park smirks and jokes, "I should start calling you assistant manager." Wu laughs, throwing the report toward him. "Don't even think about it," she teases. She points out that the Jungle Guild was caught teaming again. This time, the team had 3 players with B rank traits, and 1 within a rank trait. Park's expression darkens. How does a guild notorious for poor sportsmanship attract such talent? He wonders aloud. But the real question is, how did one person manage to defeat members of such caliber? Yunhee says that the opponent's high firepower as a magic user might explain the loss. Park shakes his head, saying, "At level 1, even a magic user's firepower shouldn't be enough to pull that off. Even if they had a strong trait, there's a limit to what they can do." Snapping her fingers, Yunhee says, "The report mentions that the player triggered magic with just a snap of their fingers. Could it be an S-rank trait?" Park considers it, but remains skeptical. No matter how good the trait is, there's more to this case. It's too unprecedented. Yunhee's eyes widen as she guesses. Could it be a constellation? Park nods thoughtfully. That would explain it. A wild card like that could make sense. Yunhee counters, A constellation for a level 1 player? That's impossible. Since the Galaxy Arena emerged in 2015, constellations have only appeared for Diamond rank and above. Park concedes that she might be right, but suggests the player could be an irregular or backed by something else. Either way, we need to recruit him immediately, Yanhee warns. Other guilds won't sit still on this. Park chuckles. That means you'll have to work harder, he teases. Suddenly, a golden light fills the room, and a leg steps out of it. A playful voice says, "Even if it's just the two of you here, you can relax and call me Miss." Smiling, a woman emerges from the light and asks Park how he noticed her as she was using an AA rank stealth artifact. Park replies, "I didn't notice at first, but when player Kim Seaman was mentioned, I sensed your presence." The woman sits on his desk, shrugging. "I was just bored. The academy doesn't mean much to me anyway." Park sighs. "If you're so bored, why not join the arena instead of sneaking around?" She pouts. "Didn't you watch my last match, which I streamed?" Park apologizes. "Sorry, I was busy with an urgent report." She waves it off and picks up the report on his desk. "Is this the one that surprised you?" Panicking, Park shouts, "That's classified guild information." She smirks. "What's the big deal? I own the guild, remember?" As he tries to snatch the report from her hands, her eyes widen as she notices Kim Seaman's name. We are taken to where the system teleported Seaman back to his house. He immediately goes to his bed, sighing in relief that it was finally over. The system notified him that he had obtained additional experience points as a reward for placing first in the tutorial. Additionally, the bound trade item, the Philosopher's Stone, had absorbed a portion of the experience points. As a result, his level increased by 2, while the Philosopher's Stone's level increased by 1. Seaman stared at the system in shock, unable to understand the distribution. Based on his calculations, he could have reached level 3 without the Philosopher's Stone. Opening the status window, he noticed that his strength, agility, and stamina were still lagging compared to his alchemy power. He smiled, thinking that the disparity was actually a good thing. Clenching his fist, Seaman thought about how having a lower level while the Philosopher's Stone continued to grow stronger would give him a significant advantage in the arena. It was a simple concept. Arenas where players of similar levels competed usually placed everyone at level 3. But what if he secretly hid his additional level? This would make his stats higher than others, enabling him to dominate matches. Moreover, winning games could help him change his title. Seaman considered this important, as even Malsik had struggled to grow her title. He then opened the system to check for new titles, and discovered he had earned the title Ruler of the Tutorial. He thought this was pretty standard for titles, and also found it weird to receive a growth-type title so early, but he couldn't see it as a loss. The system then informed Seaman that collecting more titles would increase the level of the achievement shop. This revelation shocked him, as the achievement shop typically unlocked only at gold rank or higher. Collecting titles was essential to purchase stats there. With 2 remaining stat points, Seaman debated how to allocate them. He considered investing everything into transmutation power, as the Philosopher's Stone was incredibly overpowered. However, it didn't solve the fundamental law of equivalent exchange in alchemy. Reflecting on how he had already spent 1,000,000 points, he wondered what harm another 500 points could do. To overcome these limitations, higher transmutation power was essential. Even so, Seaman realized he couldn't completely ignore physical stats in favor of transmutation power. Among high-rank magicians, physical ability sometimes made the difference. He decided to raise his physical stats to the awakening average of 5, before allocating the rest. Opening the system to distribute his stats, he suddenly paused, placing his hand over his heart. He summoned the Philosopher's Stone, intending to ask it a question. Seaman asked if, as long as equivalent exchange was possible, he could transmute anything. The Philosopher's Stone responded, but when Seaman asked further, asking if human transmutation was possible, it remained silent. Shocked, Seaman guessed that the silence was understandable. Human transmutation was considered taboo in alchemy. He knew that chimeras, the most notable result of human transmutation, sometimes appeared as monsters in the arena. However, Shimon believed such practices could be used for beneficial purposes, much like how science advanced on 21st century Earth. The Philosopher's Stone said something that made Shimon pause. He questioned whether he was truly planning to use it for good, and admitted that his primary intention was to grow stronger. However, he conceded that in a dire situation, he couldn't make any promises. Clenching his fist, Shimon resolved himself. He had a goal to achieve, no matter the cost. The Philosopher's Stone spoke again, causing Shimon to touch his chest. It warned him of the dangers of human transmutation, but Shimon was confused by it. The stone mentioned something about being an item that opposed the Emerald Tablet. Shimon was taken aback, asking if the Philosopher's Stone implied the existence of another item similar to the Emerald Tablet that contained opposing knowledge. When the Philosopher's Stone confirmed this, Shimon acknowledged it wasn't so strange, as the Emerald Tablet didn't contain anything related to human transmutation. He recalled undergoing a qualifying test when he first obtained the Emerald Tablet. It had acknowledged him as its owner, binding itself to him. This binding nature made the item unusable by anyone else, deterring theft by burning anyone unqualified for ownership, potentially killing them. Reflecting on this, Shimon shivered, realizing that if he hadn't qualified, he would have burned to ashes. He asked the Philosopher's Stone if it was concerned he might not qualify for this new transmutation item. When the Philosopher's Stone replied, Shimon grew determined. Clenching the bedsheet in frustration, he decided to pursue the item anyway. Suddenly, the Philosopher's Stone mentioned something else, shocking Shimon. He asked if it was possible to partially block the penalty for not meeting the qualifications, ensuring he could at least avoid death. The Philosopher's Stone responded, and Shimon stood up resolute. As a player, he believed that as long as he didn't die, he could recover one way or another. He decided to invest all his remaining stat points into alchemy power. Opening the system, Shimon asked the Philosopher's Stone for a rough image of the transmutation material. The Philosopher's Stone provided one, and Shimon thought it resembled the Emerald Tablet, but with a different color. Closing his eyes, he visualized it dark purple instead of light green, and imagined it functioning like a modern smartphone screen for easy browsing and knowledge acquisition. Snapping his fingers, Shimon received a notification from the system stating that his alchemy power was insufficient to achieve the requested transmutation. He smiled, expecting this outcome. The system then informed him that completing the transmutation would require 10,000 achievement points to establish an equivalent exchange. Shocked, Shimon hadn't anticipated such a cost. The Philosopher's Stone replied, and Shimon, astonished, asked if the amount was considered cheap, comparing it to a Strefe's, which cost only 500 points. He realized this was on another level. Disappointed, Shimon sighed. He had worked hard to save up 12,300 points, and now had to lose a significant chunk. But he resigned himself, thinking no risk, no reward. The system deducted 10,000 achievement points. Suddenly, waves of light emanated from his hand. Shimon's eyes widened. This energy felt both familiar and strange. Raising his hand, he snapped his fingers, and we see the energy swirl around him for a moment. He was left utterly confused. Shimon was observing the power around him in confusion when suddenly something grabbed his arm. He thought, "What is this?" As he felt it moving around and increasing, he wondered if it was alive. The system informed him that he had created an unregistered mythical artifact, earned 5,000 achievement points, and the option for the title Pioneer of Alchemy had improved with a new option added to the title. He looked at the system in shock, thinking if the title had been improved. He even looked at the system again, finding out about a 5% reduction in synthesis energy. This meant not only does the percentage efficiency increase as the level gets higher, but as a title grows, the reduction will also increase over time. In conclusion, the option to reduce synthesis energy consumption is a blatantly overpowered option. He smiled and then sighed, thinking, no wonder Malik mentioned a growth-type title. The system further informed him that the constellation Black Goat was wide-eyed at the trace left on him, and he had attracted the attention of an unregistered constellation in the galaxy arena due to a series of unbelievable achievements. The Galaxy Arena was now discussing player Kim Shimin. Shimin looked at the book-like creature in his hand, wondering what it was. It was called the Obsidian Tablet, currently at a 20% counterfeit grade. It was a collection of human transmutation knowledge. It contained information about human transmutation and other subjects, but for some reason, it could not fully exert its power. Shimin was pissed. He had gotten another replica. He even spent 10,000 achievement points, and it was only 20% complete. Even a straff only cost 500 points for 10% completion. He banged his hand on his head, disappointed, but then paused. He realized that if that's the case, it meant there's no rebound for the affinity. The Philosopher's Stone told him something. He removed a finger from his eyes, thinking if it's really rebound free, then that means it's permanent. Assuming achievement points increase by 20% per 10,000 points, just 4 more times with 40,000 achievement points means he could own a mythical grade item. His eyes shined with excitement as he smirked, thinking, this is insane. He chuckled with happiness when the Philosopher's Stone said something to him. He was stunned and put his hand on his heart, asking the Philosopher's Stone not to worry, as he was prepared for the penalties that might occur if he wasn't qualified. He then opened his phone, noticing 5 missed calls, thinking that with a single touch, he could contact his siblings. Besides, he was used to pain. For someone like him, an arena disease patient, intense, unbearable pain had been a lifelong companion. Thinking further, if his guess was correct, there wouldn't be any penalty at all. He raised the book upward with a smile on his face. The book opened in front of him, and suddenly the same thing continued to grab his arm. He smiled, thinking that as expected, he didn't feel any pain or pressure. As the original owner, the constellation, Black Goat seemed to have a deep interest in him, so there was no way this divine relic would harm him. The system showed up, stating that the Obsidian Tablet was requesting fusion with the Philosopher's Stone. His eyes popped out as he could not understand what it was, when suddenly, the Obsidian Tablet covered his entire body. That's what you get. Ha, ha. His body now could not control the pain, and he was trembling in agony. Suddenly, the Philosopher's Stone reacted. Shimin looked around in shock as the system informed him that the Philosopher's Stone had accepted the Obsidian Tablet's request. Shimin was freaking out, unable to understand what was happening, when suddenly, the Obsidian Tablet threw him to the ground. He was in a panic as the tentacles spread all over his body. He was so shocked that he couldn't believe something like this tentacles was happening to him. He shouted in pain so loudly that even the neighbors could hear him. He screamed at the Obsidian Tablet to stop, saying he couldn't take it anymore. Then, the system appeared, showing that the Obsidian Tablet had successfully fused with the Philosopher's Stone. A small change occurred in the Philosopher's Stone, and a new option was added. The rank of the Philosopher's Stone increased. Shimin was lying on the floor, almost dead. Hours later, the system welcomed everyone to the Galaxy Arena, informing them that today's arena event was defense. The number of participants was 50%, and the condition cooperation had been added. The participants would be organized into teams of 5, and once all participants assembled, the arena would begin. Kim Minying looked at his system with shock, mentioning that he just finished the tutorial, and it was already a defense event. This was going to be tough for him, and on top of that, there was a cooperation condition. It was probably still in the placement test phase, so who would have thought a silver-ranked event would match here? Further thinking, it must be because of that monster of a guy who eliminated him so quickly. But in a way, this was an opportunity. He might get another chance to secure that promising talent he missed last time. Now, he was determined. Suddenly, he heard something from behind and looked at 3 strange-looking guys who were disappointed, wondering why it was offense and not defense. One of them smiled, mentioning that it was probably because his mimmer was high. He asked the others if he ranked during the tutorial. A guy with blonde hair told him it was his fault, and that this was going to be difficult, while the guy with black hair replied, saying he shouldn't worry, as he would carry hard again this time. Kim Minying was freaking out as he recognized the emblem and realized these were the Scorpion Guild bastards. He thought, no matter the rank of the arena, they were always famous trolls or trash players, but the Scorpion Guild was in a league of its own. First, They formed a massive group that couldn't be ignored, and their poor sportsmanship came with its own twisted logic. But in reality, they were just pawns, indulging in every form of bad behavior. He sighed in disappointment, thinking, there goes my shot at being a promising rookie. As they walked toward him, they mentioned that they heard it was a F-Man team. But it was just this guy. Smiling and laughing, they guessed the rest hadn't matched yet. They wondered how amazing the guy the system might pair them with was. Kim Min-young thought they were still as cocky as ever. One of the guys noticed the Sungsum Guild emblem on Min-young, never expecting him to be from the Sungsum Guild. They called their leader, Choi Jial, asking if that was for real. Jial walked toward him, asking him what his name was. Kim Min-young looked at him with anger and replied, I am Kim Min-young. Jial ran through his mind and replied that, looking at his face, he'd never heard of him before. He then stared at him, asking if he was just a newbie who barely cleared the tutorial. He added that no matter how bad the situation was, Sungsum would not give a guild member anything lower than C rank gear. Kim Min-young was trembling in fear when Jial further mentioned that he heard big corporations love to flex, so if he scored well in the tutorial, they'd even give him rank equipment. But it looked like he didn't even rank. Kim Min-young clenched his fist in anger, thinking he had to hold on. As much as he wanted to kill these three right now, they were still stronger than him, so he calmed himself down, realizing that if he fought now, he'd just lose. When Jial held his shoulder, assuring him that he would make sure he cleared this properly, he told him to just do exactly what he was told. Kim Min-young was still trembling in anger, thinking they were going to take all the rewards for themselves. He angrily lashed out internally, calling them bastards. Suddenly, blue energy appeared from behind, and they turned around. We know who it is. Young's eyes popped out, wondering why he was here. When Jial laughed, mentioning that it was bad, he stated that arena matching really was something. The Sungsum guy was one thing, but they even threw in a player with no gear. Shimin smirked and asked them if they were talking about him, with an evil grin. Jial pointed his mace at Shimin, demanding, who would I be talking to? He then questioned, did you just swear at me? Shimin laughed, but suddenly the Philosopher's Stone reacted, its voice booming, what, you little shit? Who are you calling names? You ugly bastard who looks like you got scraped across asphalt. I'll rip that hideous face of yours to shreds and fry it up. Now, that's what you call a personality. For the first time, they could clearly hear the Philosopher's Stone speaking. Shimin rubbed his chest, trying to calm himself, but he grinned worriedly. Even though he rubbed his chest to relax, he had no idea why his stomach felt like it was on fire. The reason for this was the stone. As Shimin continued rubbing his chest, the stone reacted freakily, saying, if you touch me like that, what am I supposed to do? Awesome touch. Love it so much, more touch me more. Shimin thought that if he had known this change would happen to the stone, he would have stopped the obsidian tablet fusion, no matter what, as it had caused the stone to undergo a strange transformation. Jial turned to his team, confused, asking, what the hell is Shimin doing? One of the guys laughed, saying, I don't know. Maybe we scared him too much. Hey, you freeloading bastard, you scared? Jial questioned the blonde-haired guy, who replied, there's nothing to ask. Shimin is definitely terrified. Another guy mocked Shimin, saying, he's probably some guildless nobody. Jial laughed, remarking, looks like Shimin's been freeloading rides with soft-hearted suckers until now. But me, Choi Jial, I'm no pushover. Shimin, hearing this, questioned, are you insulting me because of my gear? He sighed, adding, if it's about my gear, then that's a misunderstanding. Jial angrily slammed his mace to the ground, saying, only an idiot would believe it's a misunderstanding. Who are you trying to fool? Shimin grinned slightly and replied, did you say your name was Choi Jial? Interesting. He then told him, in this rank, it's common for mages or support types not to have gear. It looks like you've been hanging around the arena for a while. Shimin stopped for a moment and asked, are you from the Jiangle? Jial grinned, thinking Shimin was now dropping the polite act after seeing his guild emblem. But Shimin told him, I don't waste respect on things that aren't human. The blonde-haired guy angrily called Shimin a punk for daring to insult them. Another guy added angrily, How dare a freeloading punk run his mouth like that? Then, Kel, one of Jeol's teammates, stepped forward, seeing that Shimin was taking them as a joke. He filled his mace with energy, preparing to crush Shimon's face, then attacked confidently. But Shimin flicked his finger at that moment. Jeol broke out in a sweat and shivered slightly as Shimin held his energy-filled mace with his hand. He couldn't believe his eyes. He was losing in strength to a weakling like Shimin. He tried to pull back his mace, but it wouldn't budge. Shimin remarked with an evil grin, "I thought your high speed meant you had high agility, but it seems like strength is your main stat. Or is it because of your special trait?" Kel couldn't believe that the bastard didn't even flinch. His team became worried and jumped out to attack Shimin, but Minying pierced one of them through the throat from behind. Seeing this, another guy angrily charged at Minying, but before he could attack, he was pierced from behind by Shimin's spell and killed in one strike. Kel was unable to do anything. He couldn't believe that with an A-grade strength trait, focusing on strength and agility stats, and with at least B-grade equipment, he was still being overwhelmed by Shimin. Shimin was being overpowered with just one hand. Furious, he asked, "How are you capable of such strength?" Despite still having the energy to shout, Shimin broke Jeol's mace in half, shocking him. "Now that's the face I like to see," Shimin remarked, then told him not to feel bad since they were the ones who attacked first. With a loud bang, Shimin smashed Jeol's face with his own mace, killing him in a single strike. This arena was significantly harder than a typical silver rank offense, thanks to Shimin's high mimmer, but that also meant the rewards for clearing it would be just as high. The fewer the members, the more concentrated the rewards. That's why Cole and his men were nitpicking about Shimin's gear and attacking so aggressively. The skill Shimin used was called Ogre's Physique, which gave him only 15% of an ogre's strength, allowing him to replicate their physical abilities. Shimin couldn't believe such strength was only 15%. The Philosopher's Stone told him, "Yes, of course. Aside from the risk of holding such a qualification, imagine if your handsome arm turned into an ogre's. It's disgusting. If the Obsidian tablet hadn't offered to maintain your appearance as a condition, I wouldn't have accepted the fusion request." Shimin told the stone it was fine. He then looked at Minying with a surprised expression. "You must be the last teammate," Minying politely replied. "Yes, that's correct." Shimin paused and asked, "Have I seen you somewhere before?" "You seem familiar," Minying replied. "Yes, in the tutorial." Shimin immediately recalled, "You're the one I fought at the riverbank." Minying humbly confirmed, "Yes," and introduced himself as Kim Minying from the Sangsum Guild. "I'm looking forward to working with you." Shimin's expression changed upon hearing the words Sangsum Guild, which belonged to Yu Zhong. Minying thought he had said something wrong, but Shimin told him, "No, it's nothing. I just got distracted for a moment." He shook Minying's hand and said, "We should work well together." Minying asked, "Is it just the two of us?" "This round requires a 5-man team," Shimin replied. "Those 3 died after matching, so we won't be getting replacements." The system then announced that all participants had been matched and the arena was beginning. With a 30-minute time limit, they were teleported to a forest. Shimin told Minying, "We should get going, since we're already short on numbers compared to the other teams." Minying agreed. Yes, just then, Shimin received a message from the system. "The constellation Zeus is observing you." Another message followed. "The constellation Black Goat expresses deep satisfaction with your actions." Shimin was surprised that Zeus was still watching him. And now, the Black Goat was too. He wondered why I'm not even high rank yet, just doing placement matches. Why are 2 constellations interested in me? Constellations didn't usually observe players they didn't sponsor. Another message appeared, informing them that their target area was an occupied Goblin stronghold. They needed to clear the area by any means within 30 minutes. Shimin was shocked when he realized it was a stronghold of goblins. Strongholds were commonly referred to as checkpoints. These strongholds varied slightly in design and environment depending on the map, but their basic structure was a fortress built atop a bridge. However, there was a problem. Shimin asked, "Why is there a checkpoint here?" Checkpoints only appeared in platinum rank or higher. He thought for a moment, No, that's not it. The trio from the Jungle Guild and Kim Minying surpassed the level of a placement test. Shimin realized that everyone's skill level was high enough to make the mission a success, so if the matchmaking was fair, they would be the only ones to get something special like a checkpoint. The rewards for clearing it would be significant. He grinned. Well, if that's the case, I might as well wipe them all out and take all the kill rewards too. But then, he remembered he had a partner. Shimin turned to Minying and asked if he had any desire for kills. Minying immediately replied, no, at all. I just got through the tutorial, so goblins are too much for me. I just hope we can secure the clear reward safely. Shimin felt relieved and told Minying that they should plan a strategy together with the goal of securing the clear reward safely in mind. He was happy since now he could take all the kills for himself. Inside the fortress, one of the goblins announced it was time for a skill change and a break. Another goblin commented that he was tired of standing guard and that it was boring. A third goblin told him not to talk nonsense, adding that at least it was better here because the boss wasn't in a good mood, and those idiots inside would be scolded. Suddenly, Shimin appeared above them undetected and jumped down, killing 2 of the goblins. The skill he used for that jump was Black Panther Physique, currently at 12% completion. Black Panther Physique had been synthesized, and Shimin was now able to replicate a Black Panther's abilities, allowing him to sneak up on them without making a sound. The goblins, experts at hearing even the slightest noise, failed to notice anything. Multiple organism synthesis is still tough, Shimin commented. The Philosopher's Stone responded, saying that pulling off multi-organism synthesis itself was absurd. Minying politely asked Shimin if he really thought the 2 of them would be able to take down the fortress. Shimin assured Minying, saying, when I took a quick glance before my sneak attack, their weapons were just rocks and poison needles. They won't be able to penetrate your armor, he added. Stick to the plan, and we'll be fine, Ying replied. Okay, I understand. They walked toward the fortress to carry out their plan. Inside, the goblins were happily eating meat, exclaiming how delicious it was. Another goblin said they hadn't had meat in ages. Suddenly, they detected someone running toward them. It was Minying. He charged at them with his sword, prompting the goblins to alert the others about a human invader. At first, they panicked, but upon seeing it was just one human, they smiled confidently. They catapulted stones at him. Is this all you've got, fools? Minying taunted. The goblins brought out their poison needles, aiming to stop him from passing. Confident they could take him down, they surrounded him completely. Minying swung his sword, cutting down goblins in his path. One goblin pierced him in the waist in his blind spot. Minying gritted his teeth, deciding to hold out a little longer. Just a little more, he muttered, then taunted. Come at me, bastards. He shouted for Shimin to attack. Shimin immediately activated Astraph, shooting it down at the center of the goblins and taking them all down in one strike. Standing with Astraph in his hand, he received a message from the system. The Philosopher's Stone minimized the rebound, and the Philosopher's Stone's grade and level were restored. You have regained 50 achievement points previously consumed. Minying held his waist in surprise, unable to believe that Shimin had taken them all down in an instant. Shimin then activated his status window, disappointed to see that the achievement points he got back after using Astraph were still the same, even after merging the Philosopher's Stone with the Obsidian tablet and raising its grade to E. The Philosopher's Stone questioned if Simon really knew what a rebound was. It said, no synthesis material can interfere with rebounds. It's only because of you that such a thing is even possible. You need to at least hit grade B. Simon then got a message that the constellation Zeus smiled warmly at his efficient use of Astraph and sponsored him with 100 achievement points. Simon was surprised to see he had been sponsored without a broadcast on, considering the Obsidian tablet's level of completion and all the synthesis he still needed to do. This sponsor is great, he thought, and thanked Zeus for the sponsorship. Astraph then vanished from his hand. Too bad, he thought, I could have used it one more time. He realized that even if he burned all the equivalents invested in synthesis, the rebound would still occur. Well, I've learned my lesson. Suddenly, a yellow glow appeared behind them. Seeing this, Minion told Simon that the target zone had appeared and they should get going. But Simon told him to go ahead. Minion, surprised, asked if Simon wasn't coming, as the goblins were regrouping. "You saw it earlier, right? I'll be fine," Simon assured him. He told Minion he would take care of the rest, so Minion should go ahead. Minion couldn't argue and told Simon to please make sure to visit the Sam Guild next time, as they'd make sure to pay him. He then thanked Simon profusely. Now facing the frightened goblins, Simon stretched his hand to wrap things up. Out of nowhere, an axe was swung at him. The force was intense, smashing the ground to pieces, but Simon was fast enough to dodge the sneak attack. The goblins cheered as their boss arrived, mocking Simon. Simon's face was filled with fear as he looked at the boss. He was surprised to see a hobgoblin. He wondered why the hell it was here. He then recalled the message, which said the target area was a foothold for corrupted goblins. Now seeing the hobgoblin, he understood what the system meant by a corrupted goblin foothold. Originally, a hobgoblin is a monster created when superior goblins are influenced by magic. With such magic overflowing in the infiltrated bridgehead, its appearance was inevitable. Still, no matter how high Simon's mimmer might be, he deemed the appearance of a hobgoblin to be too much since it was at least platinum level. He activated Black Panther body tissue. A hobgoblin furiously charged at him with its axe, seeking revenge for its subordinates. Simon dodged the first strike, and the second strike that came after. As he dodged, Simon wondered why it was so easy. He realized its overall physical ability was actually lower than a real hobgoblin. He immediately took a step backward with a grin. He realized the hobgoblin had been nerfed. It seemed the administrator had some conscience, after all. He murmured about how disappointing it was that he had to spend achievement points for such a battle, but it was better to make sure, just in case. As he was about to summon Astraph, he received a message informing him that the constellation Black Goat furrowed its brow at Zeus's consecutive lightning. Simon was surprised by this message. The constellation Black Goat then pointed to the obsidian tablet Simon was holding and expressed dissatisfaction. While Simon was distracted, the hobgoblin furiously struck at him. The impact was intense, and Simon was pushed backward. Indeed, it's still a hobgoblin, even after it's been nerfed, Simon murmured. To Simon's surprise, he received a mission from the constellation Black Goat. The constellation Black Goat felt strong dissatisfaction with Simon, who only used Zeus's lightning. The mission was for Simon to defeat the hobgoblin using human transmutation alone, with a reward of 500 achievement points. The goblin charged at him, launching another strike, which Simon dodged easily. Simon expressed his disbelief, seeing that the constellation Black Goat was offering achievement points for such a mission. Simon realized it must be because of Black Goat's pride, especially since Simon was an alchemist. If that was the case, Simon decided to accept the mission. The constellation Black Goat smiled satisfactorily, but in return, it made Zeus frown and express dissatisfaction. The constellation Black Goat threatened Zeus. "You damn pervert, should I drop by Olympus once again, huh?" Zeus shook his head, thinking, that crazy bastard is still the same. Zeus then took a step back, putting his hands behind his back. Simon had no idea what the hell was going on between the two. The hobgoblin got angry seeing that Simon wasn't paying attention to it, but Simon still didn't care. He thought about the mission, which he deemed possible, and charged to confront the hobgoblin, who was charging at him angrily. Simon activated Ogre's body physique and punched the hobgoblin with full force, but the hobgoblin used its shield to block the punch. Though the shield was damaged, the hobgoblin was surprised to see a human with such strength. It then grabbed Simon by the head, confident it had finally won. Even the goblins cheered as they saw their boss had the upper hand, shooting poison needles at Simon and piercing his back. The hobgoblin held Simon's head, smirking, thinking it had won, and called humans fragile. It told Simon it was disappointing that he fell for such a cheap trick without even poison resistance. The hobgoblin said it would start by cutting off Simon's limbs one by one, but before the hobgoblin could strike with its axe, Simon grabbed its hand, deactivated the poison needles, and with Ogre's physique, he cut the hobgoblin's hand in half, making it scream in pain. He then grabbed the hobgoblin by the neck and said, "Goblins are really inferior." Thinking I'd fall for such a trick, he smashed the hobgoblin's neck off from its head. Seeing their leader had fallen, the goblins panicked. Simon got a message about completing the Black Goat Constellation's mission, acquiring 500 achievement points. The constellation, Black Goat, also showed tremendous satisfaction with Simon's utilization of human transmutation, awarding him an additional 500 achievement points. Since he single-handedly defeated the hidden boss, the hobgoblin, he received 500 achievement points as a reward. Simon was surprised to learn it was a hidden boss, realizing it wasn't just meant to be caught. Another message appeared. The Galaxy Arena, which had been discussing Simon, was shocked by his achievement, followed by the constellation Black Goat mocking the administrator, saying, "Damn," at the administrator's face. "This is why I don't register as a constellation." Simon had no idea why they were discussing him. He thought about there being a similar message when he made the Obsidian tablet, wondering if drawing the Galaxy Arena's interest was a good thing. He decided to think positively, since the Galaxy Arena certainly provided risks and returns. There was nothing to worry about right now anyway. He then left to receive the rewards. As Simon got teleported back home, he received multiple messages from the system. He received a message informing him that he had successfully cleared the arena, corrupted Goblin foothold, and defeated all the enemies alone under 5-person cooperation conditions. So the clear rewards increased according to his performance. The Philosopher's Stone also received a certain amount of experience. His level increased by 4, and the Philosopher's Stone's level increased by 2. As a reward, he acquired the Hobgoblin's battle axe, and since he successfully defeated the hidden boss alone, he was rewarded with the corrupted Hobgoblin serum. Simon was surprised by these rewards, but that's not all. He achieved the hidden boss achievement, Hidden Boss Hunt, currently 1, and the remaining number of times was unknown. He acquired 1,000 achievement points. Such a reward is extravagant, but it seems it's huge, because it's the first boss, he thought. He then activated the status window. He's currently at level 7, his alchemy power is at 13, with a total of 9,000 achievement points. His remaining stats are 4, and the Philosopher's Stone is at E rank. He grinned slightly because he'd soon reach 10,000 achievement points. He asked the Philosopher's Stone if he could transmute the Obsidian tablet again with 10,000 achievement points. The stone replied yes, but the required amount of achievement points and the increased percentage would change as he goes further. Simon agreed without questioning much, which came as odd to the Philosopher's Stone since it thought Simon would ask why. Simon told the stone he roughly expected that much, since it's been years since he started alchemy. In short, it means it takes more points each time he levels up, so he'd need to invest carefully. He thought, the Obsidian tablet is a permanent item, and it's different from consumable items like Astraph. It means you can use it infinitely once you make it. Besides, the power of human transmutation with the Aeon tablet is beyond question. The Philosopher's Stone then reminded Simon that the 10,000 points and 20% growth rate will apply until the second transmutation. Simon was surprised by this news because it meant that the transmutation cost would remain the same till 40% completion. Simon was happy about it because even just calculating with numbers, the ability of human transmutation would be twice as strong as it is now. Still, it would be good to transmute while keeping some points in reserve, since achievement points are his main resource. He commented that he noticed that even if the clear reward increased, it didn't give him AP, which stands for arena points. He remembered occasionally getting it as a reward for broadcasts of arena clears, but it's expected since it's still the placement test section. Seeing his stats, Simon saw that his alchemy power is now a total of 17. In addition, the Philosopher's Stone level also increased from 5 to 7. Now, he opened his inventory for the main dish. There were 2 items there. The first item was the Hobgoblin's Battle Axe, a BB rank item which increased all slashing attacks by 10% and caused paralysis when attacking living creatures. It granted additional strength stats of 5. And only those from level 50 with the strength of 35 or higher could use it. Simon murmured that the axe is preferred by combat types, and the item options are the same as Platinum rank. He was surprised to see it even had a +5 strength, which can be seen as the highest grade option. He thought with a grin, usually, the strength stat has options of around 1 to 3. Now that the max value is confirmed, it is excessively lucrative. He was quite surprised to see the second item. It hadn't been long since he regressed, but he felt like he was seeing it after a very long time. He then brought out the Hobgoblin Serum from his inventory. It was called Corrupted Hobgoblin Serum, rank C. It's corrupted by excessive magic, making the toxicity much stronger. Seeing this, the Philosopher's Stone realized Simon endured with medicine until he was transmuted. The side effects of Simon's magic disability caused a physical strength decline and worsened after regular arena battles, followed by an indescribable pain. So, he used special potions every time, and the serum was one of the main ingredients in the anesthetic potion. The stone asked him why he hadn't drunk the elixir he made sooner to cure his magic disability. Simon told him it was because of some circumstances. The stone scolded him, saying he had to take care of himself first, but thanks to that, he was transmuted in the best condition. Simon agreed because if he hadn't transmuted the Philosopher's Stone based on the elixir, the regression wouldn't have been possible. The stone added, saying that regression is something even constellations can't do. The stone's words prompted Simon to ask why it had transmuted to heal him and cause regression. The stone replied, "There is an existence to do that, but the name was censored." When he mentioned it, Simon told the stone to repeat what it just said, but the stone told him he couldn't mention the name, since it's an existence that even the constellations are wary of. Simon sighed as he lay on the bed, his curiosity about the existence who regressed him fading. The stone asked if he was just giving up like that. Simon replied, "There's no point to it, since I can't hear it even if you tell me about the being who regressed me." The stone agreed because the Galaxy Arena is already giving him a hard time right now. They were frantically sending him messages that made his head spin, telling him not to mention it. By the way, the stone asked Simon what he was going to do with the serum since he didn't have magic disability anymore. Simon told the stone there was no need to manufacture it as a painkiller anymore, so he was thinking of making an elixir. The stone had no idea how he'd do that with poison. "Poison is also medicine for an alchemist," Simon commented with a grin. "Oh my goodness, I love this so much," the stone exclaimed. The stone was so excited as he wondered how humiliated the poison would feel when its original nature as a poison was transformed into the property of an elixir, which is the complete opposite. Simon felt a bit uneasy with the way the stone was talking, as it sounded like someone with a crazy fetish. The next day, Simon was surprised to see a very tall building. Even the stone was surprised at how incredibly huge the building was and asked if the place was called the Player's Mecca. Simon replied, "Yes. More precisely, it's called Galaxy Agura." The stone asked if the Galaxy Agura was a building provided by the arena. Simon told him it wasn't. The Galaxy Arena directly manages the broadcasting side. Someone then asked Simon if he was an awakened one, saying there would be a brief verification process. They asked Simon to please put an item in his inventory for verification. Simon did as instructed, and as he was verified, she gave him his player's watch. Simon took it and put it on. The watch had a feature that recorded your personal account and transaction history as data. It's a kind of advanced artifact equipped with various functions, from party recruitment to internal maps of the Agura. The lady asked Simon if this was his first time at Galaxy Agura, offering to give him instructions on how to use the watch. Simon told her it was okay. He'd used it before. Hearing this, she wished him a good time as Simon walked away. The stone asked if the many people there were players. Simon replied, "Yes, some might just be awakened ones, but you won't be able to enter without having an inventory." "That's amazing," the stone remarked. "That's why it's called the Sanctuary of Players." The stone then asked where Simon was going next. Simon replied, "To the player-exclusive marketplaces. I've got something to sell there." As he entered the elevator, he overheard people talking about the news of how insane this year's academy graduates were, particularly Kim Soo and Lee Yu-jung, who had already broken into the diamond rank and become top-tier players. They were hailed as the best in Korea, especially since they had broken through Diamond only 4 years after debuting. The elevator arrived at the 4th floor, and Simon smiled as he stepped out. The stone asked why Simon was smiling. As they walked, the stone was surprised by the number of shops. It then questioned if everyone bought and sold ores there. Simon replied, yes, among them, there are more guild shops than individual shops. But why do they sell here in these shopping districts instead of the nearby auction house? The stone asked. Simon explained, once it falls into the uniform category, it becomes difficult to auction, since most of the reasonable prices have already been set. It's cleaner to trade with guilds. Simon arrived at the Sun Sam Guild store and walked toward the attendant. He was surprised by how sophisticated and neat the store was, such was expected of a big corporation. The attendant asked with a gentle smile if Simon was looking for anything. Simon told him he wasn't there to buy but to sell. The attendant was a bit speechless since it had been a while since someone came to their store for that purpose. Simon then slammed the hobgoblin's axe on the table. The man's eyes widened in surprise when he saw the axe. He held it and observed it, surprised that it had a +5 strength boost, which was the best option so far. With a slight grin, Simon asked if it was possible to sell it right now. The man replied, of course, and showed Simon the recent market prices and details of Hobgoblin's battle axes traded in Galaxy Agura. Simon's mouth widened in disbelief as he saw the 42 million won selling price. The man told him it had been sold for 38 million won as of yesterday, but that one had a +4 strength. The man adjusted his glasses and, with a sharp, evil stare, asked Simon how he obtained the item. You're a production-type player, but you don't seem like a high-level player, the man commented. Simon replied, yes, with a shocked expression, prompting the man to ask Simon about his level. Level 7, Simon replied, wondering if the man was suspecting him. The man laughed upon hearing Simon's level and said, you were probably trying to receive the full amount in cash without AP, weren't you? Simon politely told him there was a misunderstanding since he had obtained it by running the arena. The man laughed again. That's impossible. For a level 7 to do that, a platinum rank item drops only at the top of the rank. Without giving Simon time to clarify, with a greedy smile, that if Simon pressed the bell, the Agura guards would rush in and naturally find the owner of the stolen goods. However, he said, people like Simon always have pitiful circumstances, so he might be able to help a little. He then offered to pay Simon 10 million won in cash, and threatened that he wouldn't ring the bell if Simon sold it at that price. Of course, I'll also keep silent about you, he added. Now, make your choice. Simon couldn't hold it in any longer and angrily asked the man if he was kidding him. To the man's shock, someone arrived and said, you're having a very interesting conversation. Since you became the Ebu Zhong branch manager, you've become very bold. It was Li Yu Zhong. Moments later, in another scene, while sitting on a bench, Yu Zhong opened a drink and offered it to Simon with a smile. Simon thought to himself while looking at her hand. 9 years later, Yu Zhong's hand was holding a hammer soaked in blood. It was the hammer that shattered the head of her grandfather, Chairman Lee Sun Cole. That day, an unforgettable horror occurred. Not only Chairman Lee Sun Cole, but also the heads of several high-ranking officials who were gathered there were blown away. That incident can be seen as the turning point leading South Korea to its downfall. Simon had no idea why it happened, and the shock he received that day still lingered in his mind. Even people watching the scene were utterly shocked. That day, she was a completely different person from the Yu Zhong Simon knew. Seeing that he didn't take the drink, Yu Zhong remarked that it was strange since her older brother used to love cider so much. Or did his taste change? Simon apologized and told her he was lost in thought for a moment. She remarked that Simon hadn't changed. When he gets focused on something, he can't see anything around him. Simon asked if that's how she saw him. She replied, yes, thanks to you, I have learned the charm of a man who immerses himself in something. Simon took the drink, smiled, and told Yu Zhong she was still the same as always. Suddenly, someone called out for Yu Zhong. Yu Zhong told Simon she had sent him the deposit details she had mentioned earlier. Yu Zhong was surprised to see it, then told the girl to call her Dong. She thought the content was a bit different from what she expected. Dong agreed. Yu Zhong then told Simon that she had sent him 50 million won, which was the settlement for the hobgoblin's battle axe he sold. Simon was surprised and told her that the amount was a bit more than the usual price. She told him it was the compensation for a mistake one of her employees caused, though she'd like to give him more but couldn't due to some circumstances. Simon told her it was fine, even though she was the direct descendant. Business and personal matters must be clearly separated. She smiled and commented that her older brother was the same as before. He hadn't changed, which was why she could have such a conversation with him. Simon found her behavior cheesy, but thought it wasn't that strange after all this time. They left the bench, and as they walked, Yu Zhong smiled slightly. Simon then asked her, "How is Aunt doing?" She replied, "She's still unconscious, but she's okay. I have been visiting her regularly to take care of her." Simon asked if it was not just from running around the arena. She shyly replied, "Actually, I have been using the excuse of visiting her to play in the arena. I've even set up a dedicated access device in her hospital room." She then remembered Simon saying earlier that he got the hobgoblin's battle axe from the arena. She worriedly asked if his body had now fully recovered. Simon replied, "Yes. My magic incapacity has completely healed." She was happy for him, saying, "That's a relief." But she immediately apologized for how dramatic she was, then congratulated him. Though, there was a question she wasn't sure if she had the right to ask. She asked anyway, "How did you recover?" Simon was speechless for a moment, then told her, "I was just lucky. I started to feel my magic slowly returning, and then it was completely healed." She told him, "I'm glad it happened. Actually, I was really worried. Even if I looked for treatment methods, there was no cure for magical incapacity." Simon told her, "The effort you put in over the years is enough, so you shouldn't blame yourself." She was really touched by his words. Simon added, "It was an incident, and I only did what was natural." She tried to say something, but Simon gently interrupted, saying, "Enough. That was my choice back then. Even if I could go back to that time, my choice wouldn't change." The truth was, Simon secretly mocked himself. Despite saying he didn't regret what happened, he questioned why he hadn't answered his two younger siblings' messages since that day. Of course, external pressure wasn't non-existent. He was already the child of an outside woman, which had caused trouble in the family. Then, he became disabled as a player due to the incident. The Kim family probably wanted him to disappear completely, but cutting contact with the two siblings he grew up with as a child was undeniably his own choice. Even after leaving the family, they had kept contacting him regularly. Thinking about it now, Simon found it really embarrassing. If he were to make an excuse, it would be that he just couldn't accept the reality of magical incapacity. He had a bright future with a magic stat of 10, but then he lost everything in one accident. As such, he drew a line with the world, both physically and mentally, and couldn't even take care of himself. Maybe, deep down, he resented both of them. He wondered, if it weren't for the two of them back then, would my life have been different? Though he had always regretted the person he was around that time, especially in Yu Zhong's case. He wondered, if I had stayed by her side, maybe she wouldn't have ended her life with the label of a traitorous villain. Yu Zhong, with a bright smile, asked, "Did you start the arena recently?" Simon, who had been lost in thought, stuttered and replied, "It's only been a few days. I haven't even finished the placement exam yet." She smiled and said, "If that's the case, you must need equipment right now." She then suggested they go to the store together and buy some equipment. Simon shyly told her, "I'm not really in a hurry." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not in a hurry for equipment, but aren't you in the magic class?" she asked. Simon nodded. "You're right. My job is Alchemist." Now she understood why he wasn't in a rush for equipment. She then asked if Simon planned to use the money from the sale to buy alchemy materials. He replied, "Yes. I was lucky to get a few recipes lately." She smiled. "That's great. I actually need some materials too." Simon asked her, "What kind of materials do you need?" "Since you're in the combat class." Yu Zhong happily waved her hand. "Combat classes don't just swing weapons endlessly. We also make potions to help with training, Simon didn't know that, but he added, it would be more efficient to ask an alchemist or another producer for potion making. With your skill, you could probably collect all potions with ease. She held his hand, recalling that she didn't have much time since she needed to visit her mom in the hospital soon. Yu Zhong then happily dragged Simon's hand as they continued to shop for the materials, explaining that since Simon was in the combat class, it would be faster if she pulled him along. Simon was surprised at how different she was now compared to the past, noticing the change in her demeanor. After visiting the market and checking out various products and potions, Yu Zhong kept holding his hand and insisted that they go through the entire market before leaving. Although people noticed Yu Zhong, they weren't familiar with Simon. They continued shopping. Simon felt a bit overwhelmed by Yu Zhong's thoroughness in choosing materials. He found it a bit intimidating, knowing how she could distinguish quality in alchemical ingredients better than anyone. After buying more materials, Yu Zhong handed Simon a brand new arena access device. She explained that it was the latest model from Song Sam, still unreleased and only available to the higher level players in her guild. Simon hesitated, unsure if it was alright for her to give it to him, but Yu Zhong assured him it was fine and even told him not to worry about any repercussions from Song Sam. Simon, despite his initial reluctance, accepted the device. Yu Zhong then remarked that it could be considered a way to make up for the earlier unpleasant encounter with the branch manager. With the device in hand, Simon felt relieved, especially since he was planning to start arena broadcasts soon. As they were about to part ways, Simon noticed the time and realized he had to go. Yu Zhong was heading to the hospital to visit her mother, which reminded Simon of his own experiences with arena-related illnesses. His curiosity piqued. He made a mental note to look into it and possibly find a cure. As Yu Zhong called him brother and held onto his clothes, Simon remembered that he had some unanswered questions and needed to reply to her as well. At first, Simon didn't understand what Yu Zhong was talking about, but then he realized she was sulking because Seek had been bragging about how Simon had replied to him. Yu Zhong, feeling a bit annoyed, told Simon about it, and Simon jokingly thought to himself that they were no longer kids. He assured her he would send her a message once he got home, which made her really happy. Simon, seeing her change in expression, softly touched her head. He immediately remembered that girls usually didn't like having their hair touched, so he awkwardly told her to be careful on her way and decided to leave before anything more awkward could happen. He wished her goodbye. The assistant, who had been watching, commented that Simon had no manners, pointing out that touching someone's styled hair was inappropriate. She was surprised when she noticed Yu Zhong wasn't moving. Wondering if she was upset, she told Yu Zhong not to worry too much, saying she'd fix things quickly if needed. Dong didn't want anything troublesome happening, especially with so many players watching them. To her surprise, Yu Zhong was blushing. Yu Zhong shyly tells her to pretend she hadn't seen her expression, which made Dong smirk, thinking that the day was turning out stranger than expected. Getting back to business, Yu Zhong asked her what had happened with the incident from 10 years ago. Dong was confused at first but then realized Yu Zhong was talking about the mysterious attack on the upper class in Korea by terrorists. Dong revealed that nothing had been figured out, almost as if someone had erased all traces of the event. It was strange that there was no information on such a major event, especially when the media was quick to report even the smallest scandals. Yu Zhong agreed, noting how the media made a big deal over trivial things like the street group's troll incident, which caused a huge uproar. She suspected that the earlier event had been intentionally covered up by someone with significant power. Dong agreed with Yu Zhong's assessment, but cautioned that if they dug deeper, they'd run into trouble. Yu Zhong asked if Dong was scared, but Dong replied with a grin that she wasn't, though she did mention that Yu Zhong had more to lose than she did. Yu Zhong, however, seemed undeterred, saying she didn't have much more to lose. She looked at Simon, who was leaving, and mentioned that she had recently found something interesting and needed to know more. Dong then suggested they start working on the investigation, warning that once they began, there would be no turning back. Yu Zhong agreed, telling Dong to bring any data she had and, if needed, bring the head of any awakened ones involved. She was determined to get to the bottom of it, especially after finding the item that had piqued her interest. If you've made it this far, please don't forget to like, and subscribe, it really keeps me motivated. And stay tuned for the next part.